September 14, 2025. The sun was setting over the French Pyrenees when a man's rage collided with centuries of devotion. What happened next would challenge everything witnesses believed about the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual. This is not a legend. This is not folklore. This is what people saw with their own eyes. What you're about to hear has been documented by dozens of eyewitnesses. Stay with this account to understand what truly happened that evening in Lourdes. Lourdes, a name that resonates across continents. Nestled in southwestern France, this small town of 15,000 residents swells annually with 6 million pilgrims. They come seeking healing, seeking hope, seeking something beyond the ordinary rhythms of life. The streets of Lourdes tell their own story. Narrow medieval lanes wind between buildings that have watched generations pass. Shop windows display rosaries, candles, and bottles shaped to hold holy water. The air carries the scent of incense mixed with the fresh mountain breeze descending from the Pyrenees. September in Lourdes brings a particular energy. Summer's intense heat has broken, replaced by crisp evenings that make the pilgrimage walks more bearable. The town prepares for one of its most significant annual events, the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows, celebrated on September 15th. By 2025, France had transformed dramatically from the nation of past decades. Migration patterns had reshaped communities across the country. In Lourdes itself, the permanent population reflected this change. Approximately 12% of residents identified as Muslim, many second- or third-generation French citizens whose families had arrived decades earlier. The relationship between religious communities in Lourdes had always carried a unique tension. The town's entire economy revolved around Catholic pilgrimage. Hotels, restaurants, souvenir shops, all existed because of the devotion that drew millions to visit the grotto where, in 1858, a young girl named Bernadette reported visions. Most residents, regardless of their personal beliefs, understood this reality. They coexisted, each group maintaining its traditions while sharing public spaces. Mosques operated quietly. Churches held their services. Life continued with the careful balance that modern France required. But balance is fragile. The torchlight procession represented one of Lourdes' most powerful traditions. Every evening during pilgrimage season, thousands would gather as darkness fell. They would light candles, form procession lines, and walk through the sanctuary grounds singing hymns. The flames would create a river of light flowing through the darkness, a visual representation of faith that transcended language barriers. On the evening of September 14th, organizers expected a particularly large crowd. The next day's feast meant pilgrims had arrived from across Europe and beyond. By 6 in the evening, groups were already assembling near the grotto of Massabielle, the cave where Bernadette had her visions. The air held anticipation. Volunteers distributed candles protected by paper shields. Choir members warmed their voices. Elderly pilgrims claimed spots where they could rest between prayer stations. Young families positioned strollers. Everyone waited for the procession to begin. No one suspected what was coming. His name was Kareem Benjaloun, 28 years old. Born in Tarbes, a city 30 kilometers from Lourdes. His parents had immigrated from Morocco in the 1990s, part of the wave of North African families seeking opportunities in France. Kareem's childhood had been ordinary. He attended local schools, played football with neighborhood kids, spoke French as his native language. His family practiced Islam moderately. Friday prayers, Ramadan observance, but integration into French society remained their priority. Something changed during his early 20s. Friends who knew him from school would later describe the shift. He became withdrawn. Started spending hours online in forums that spoke of civilizational conflict, of religious persecution, of the need to defend Islamic identity against Western encroachment. By 2025, Kareem worked irregular construction jobs. He lived alone in a small apartment in Tarbes. His social media footprint told a story of increasing radicalization. Shared videos of controversial preachers, posts criticizing French secularism, comments expressing anger at what he perceived as disrespect toward Islam. On September 14th, Kareem woke with a sense of purpose that had been building for weeks. He had been watching the pilgrimage schedules. He knew about the evening procession. He had decided that the public display of Catholic devotion in his region represented an intolerable provocation. He drove to Lourdes that afternoon. The journey took 40 minutes. He parked in a public lot away from the sanctuary. He walked through the town, observing the pilgrims filling the streets. His anger grew with each rosary shop, each religious statue, each smiling face of someone traveling thousands of miles for faith. At a hardware store on the edge of town, Kareem purchased items that raised no suspicion individually. A metal pipe, heavy-duty tape, a backpack to carry them. He returned to his car and assembled what he intended to use as a weapon. Meanwhile, the procession preparation continued. Sister Marie-Claire, a nun from Belgium who had been volunteering in Lourdes for 15 years, coordinated the candle distribution. She had participated in hundreds of these processions. They followed the same pattern every time: assembly at the grotto, organized formation of lines, slow progression through the sanctuary while singing Ave Maria in multiple languages. "The beauty never fades," she told a first-time volunteer that evening. "Every procession feels like the first one. You see the faces of people who have traveled so far, who carry so many burdens, and for these moments they find peace." By 7:30, darkness had fully descended. The September night air cooled rapidly. Pilgrims wore jackets and sweaters. They held their unlit candles, waiting for the signal to begin. The sanctuary grounds of Lourdes cover 51 hectares. Multiple churches, chapels, and prayer spaces occupy the area. The grotto itself sits against a rocky hillside, water flowing from the spring that Bernadette had uncovered during her visions. Above it, a statue of the Virgin Mary stands in the cave opening, arms outstretched. Kareem entered the sanctuary grounds at 7:45. Security at Lourdes had increased over the years, but the sanctuary remained fundamentally open. Millions of visitors made strict screening impossible. Guards watched for obvious threats, but a young man with a backpack aroused no particular concern. He positioned himself along the procession route, near one of the bridges that crosses the Gave de Pau River running through the sanctuary. He waited, his hand inside the backpack, gripping the pipe he had prepared. At 8 o'clock, the procession began. The lead group lit their candles from the large candles kept burning at the grotto. Flame passed from person to person, creating an expanding constellation of light. Voices rose in song. Kareem watched them approach. His heart pounded. His breathing quickened. Everything he had planned, everything he had convinced himself was necessary, came down to this moment. The first rows of the procession reached his position. He stepped forward from the crowd. 8:03. The procession stretched along the riverside path, a chain of flickering lights accompanied by voices singing in French, English, Italian, Spanish. Elderly pilgrims walked slowly. Younger ones adjusted their pace to match. Children too small to hold their own candles walked between their parents. Kareem stepped onto the path directly in front of the advancing procession. He pulled the pipe from his backpack. His voice cut through the hymns. "You have no right. This is a provocation. You disrespect us with your displays." His words came in French, sharp and loud. The front rows of the procession stopped. Confusion rippled backward through the lines. The singing faltered, became ragged, then stopped entirely. People didn't understand what was happening. Was this a medical emergency? A lost individual? The darkness made it difficult to see clearly beyond the immediate circle of candlelight. Kareem raised the pipe above his head. "You make a show of your idolatry. You insult Islam with your statues and your processions." Now fear began. Pilgrims in the front rows backed away. Some dropped their candles. Others held them higher, trying to see better. Voices called out in different languages, asking what was wrong, what was happening. Sister Marie-Claire was approximately 20 meters behind the front of the procession. She heard the commotion before she understood its source. She pushed forward through the confused crowd, her experience telling her that leadership required visibility. When she reached the front, she saw Kareem. She saw the pipe. She immediately understood the danger. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had managed crowds for years. "Everyone, please remain calm. Step back slowly. Give this person space." But Kareem wasn't interested in space. He advanced toward the nearest pilgrims, the pipe swinging in wide arcs. "You will not continue. You will not pass. Take your false worship away." A man tried to reason with him. "Brother, we mean no disrespect. We are simply expressing our faith. You are welcome to express yours. By walking through our streets with your images? By singing your prayers where we must hear them? You force your religion on us." The situation was deteriorating. Kareem's agitation was increasing. Some pilgrims were trying to back away. Others stood frozen. The narrow pathway made quick evacuation impossible. Hundreds of people packed the area, with hundreds more behind them still unaware of the crisis unfolding ahead. Kareem swung the pipe at the nearest statue, a small figure of Mary carried on a platform by 4 men. The metal struck the plaster with a crack. The statue's hand broke off. The carriers stumbled backward. Screams erupted. The orderly procession dissolved into chaos. People pushed in different directions. Candles fell and extinguished. In the darkness and confusion, the danger multiplied. Sister Marie-Claire knew they needed help. She reached for her phone to call security. But before she could dial, Kareem was moving again, this time toward a group that included elderly pilgrims in wheelchairs. The next 60 seconds would determine whether this attack became a tragedy. What happened defied every expectation of how such situations unfold. A young man named Thomas Mercier, a pilgrim from Paris, stepped between Kareem and the wheelchair group. Thomas was 25, fit, and had completed mandatory military service. He raised his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "Stop, please. Look at who you're threatening. These are grandmothers. These are sick people. Whatever anger you feel, they are not your enemy." Kareem's response was to swing the pipe directly at Thomas's head. Thomas ducked, but the metal caught his shoulder. He staggered but didn't fall. Other men in the crowd moved forward now. The immediate shock had passed. The protective instinct kicked in. If this attacker wouldn't listen to reason, he would have to be physically restrained before someone was seriously hurt. Kareem saw them coming. He backed toward the river wall, the pipe still raised. His eyes darted between the approaching men and the crowd behind them. He was cornered, and trapped animals are most dangerous. He opened his mouth to shout something else. But the words never came. 8:07. 4 minutes after the attack began. The situation had reached its critical point. Kareem was cornered. Multiple men were advancing to restrain him. The pipe was still raised. Someone was about to get seriously injured or worse. Then the light changed. Not gradually. Not subtly. One moment, the scene was lit only by the scattered candles that hadn't been dropped. The next moment, a luminescence filled the area that had no identifiable source. People described it differently later. Some said it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Others insisted it emanated from a point near the grotto statue. All agreed on one thing: it wasn't electric light. It wasn't firelight. It was something else entirely. The light had a quality that made everyone who saw it stop moving. Kareem froze mid-gesture. The men advancing on him halted. Even the people still backing away went still. In that frozen moment, the air changed. Temperature is inadequate to describe it. The air became dense, present, weighted with something beyond physical properties. Breathing it felt different, like every breath carried more than oxygen. The light intensified near the grotto statue, and within that intensification, a form became visible. Eyewitness accounts would later be collected by journalists, researchers, and investigators. They vary in details but converge on essentials. A female figure appeared. She wore flowing robes of blue and white. Her face radiated a combination of profound peace and unmistakable authority. Her presence commanded attention without demanding it. She was translucent but substantial. Not a ghost. Not a projection. Something that existed in the physical space but wasn't entirely of it. Sister Marie Claire, who had dedicated her life to Marian devotion, recognized the figure immediately from countless paintings and statues. But this wasn't art. This wasn't representation. This was presence. The figure moved. Not walked, moved. The laws of motion seemed different for her. She approached Kareem, who remained frozen, the pipe still raised above his head. Thomas Mercier, who considered himself agnostic despite attending the pilgrimage with his grandmother, would later testify under oath about what he witnessed. I don't know what I believe about religious visions. I don't know how to explain what I saw. But I know that something appeared that shouldn't have been possible according to everything I understand about physical reality. The figure reached Kareem. She didn't touch him. She didn't speak in audible words. But communication occurred. Every witness within 30 meters felt it. Not heard it, felt it. As if meaning bypassed language and entered directly into understanding. The communication wasn't gentle. It carried force. The force of absolute moral authority confronting violent intention. Not threatening. Commanding. The way a parent stops a child about to cause harm, with love that doesn't diminish the firmness of the prohibition. Kareem's face transformed. The rage that had contorted his features dissolved. His eyes widened. His mouth opened. The pipe slipped from his hand and clattered onto the stone pathway. He dropped to his knees. The figure remained for perhaps 20 seconds total. Maybe 30. Time felt distorted. Then the light began to fade, and with it, the presence diminished. Not vanishing instantly, but receding like water soaking into thirsty ground. When the ordinary darkness returned, broken only by the few remaining lit candles, Kareem was weeping. Not angry weeping. Not frustrated weeping. The kind of weeping that comes from somewhere deep in the soul when something fundamental has shifted. The crowd remained silent. Hundreds of people processing what they had witnessed. The silence held for several seconds that felt much longer. Then someone began singing. Softly at first. The Ave Maria. Others joined. The hymn built, growing in volume and voices until it filled the sanctuary grounds. Kareem remained on his knees, his hands covering his face, his body shaking with sobs. Security personnel finally arrived. They had been called when the attack began, but the sanctuary grounds were large and reaching the location took time. They approached cautiously, uncertain what situation they would find. What they found was a man on his knees, unarmed, crying. Around him, a crowd singing. No ongoing violence. No immediate danger. They secured Kareem without resistance. He didn't fight. Didn't protest. When they lifted him to his feet, he could barely stand. They had to support him as they walked him toward the security office. Sister Marie Claire watched him go. Her own face was wet with tears. She turned to the pilgrims around her. We must pray for him. Whatever just happened, we must pray for him. The procession didn't continue that night. The organizers decided the situation was too unsettled. They asked everyone to return to their hotels and accommodations. They would hold a special prayer service the next day. But as people dispersed, The conversations began. What had they seen? How could they explain it? Phones came out. Video had been recorded, though the quality was poor in the darkness. Messages were sent. Social media posts appeared. Within an hour, word was spreading far beyond Lourdes. Something extraordinary had happened during the torchlight procession. Something that challenged easy explanation. September 15th. Morning brought sunshine and questions. Lourdes woke to find itself at the center of international attention. News crews were already arriving. Social media carried dozens of eyewitness videos and accounts. French authorities faced an unusual situation. They had an attempted assault. They had an attacker in custody. But the circumstances surrounding the incident's conclusion were unprecedented. Kareem Benjeloun sat in a holding cell in Tarbes. Local police had transported him there after the attack. He had been processed, his belongings inventoried, his rights explained. He had said almost nothing during the entire procedure. When investigators arrived to question him the morning of the 15th, they expected either defiance or denial. What they encountered was neither. Kareem spoke clearly but quietly. He admitted his intentions. He admitted bringing the pipe as a weapon. He admitted his anger and his plan to disrupt the procession violently. He provided details without being evasive. Then he addressed what happened during the attack. I saw her. I don't know how to explain it because I don't understand it myself. But I saw her. And when I saw her, everything inside me broke. Not broke as in damaged. Broke as in opened. Like my heart had been locked tight and suddenly it flew apart. The investigator pushed for more details. Physical description. Duration of the appearance. Specific actions or words. Kareem struggled to articulate. She didn't speak with words. But I understood. I understood that I was full of hate. I understood that I had let that hate make me into something I never wanted to be. I understood that the people I was attacking were just people, trying to find meaning. Just like me. Just like everyone. The investigator asked if Kareem was attempting to mount an insanity defense. Kareem shook his head. I'm not claiming insanity. I'm trying to tell you what happened. I don't expect you to believe it. I barely believe it myself. But I can't deny what I experienced. Meanwhile, back in Lourdes, Sister Marie-Claire was being interviewed by multiple media outlets. She had become the de facto spokesperson for the pilgrims who witnessed the event. A French television journalist asked directly, "Do you believe the Virgin Mary actually appeared last night?" Sister Marie-Claire chose her words carefully. I believe something happened that cannot be explained through ordinary means. I have participated in hundreds of processions. I have never experienced anything like what occurred last night. Neither have the hundreds of other witnesses. But an actual miraculous appearance? You understand, skeptics will demand evidence beyond subjective experience. I understand. But I also know what I saw. And I know the effect it had. A man intent on violence was stopped not through physical intervention but through something else. Whatever you choose to call it, that happened. The controversy intensified throughout the day. The videos circulating online were analyzed frame by frame. Debunkers pointed to the low quality, the darkness, the poor resolution. They suggested mass hysteria, misinterpretation of shadows and light, collective delusion fueled by religious expectation. Believers countered by pointing to the consistency of eyewitness accounts from people of different nationalities, languages, and even faiths. The crowd had included non-Catholics who confirmed seeing the same phenomenon. The question wasn't just what people saw. The question was what it meant. And that question would drive the investigation that followed. Thomas Mercier, the young man who had stepped between Kareem and the wheelchair group, gave an interview to Le Monde newspaper. The journalist noted his self-identified agnosticism. "So you don't have a religious motivation to claim a miracle occurred?" "I have no motivation except honesty. I saw something I can't explain. My worldview doesn't have room for what I witnessed. But my worldview might be incomplete. That's what I'm grappling with now." By afternoon, the Catholic community in Lourdes had organized the special prayer service promised the night before. They held it at the grotto, the same location where the procession had been scheduled to pass. Thousands attended, even more than had been present for the attempted procession. The service focused on two themes: gratitude that no one had been seriously injured, and prayer for Kareem's soul. Several speakers emphasized the need to resist responding to his violence with hatred. At the same service, representatives from the local Muslim community attended. They stood at the back, clearly uncomfortable but present. One of them, an imam named Hassan Khalil, asked to speak. The organizers hesitated. This was not part of the planned service. But something about the moment felt important. They agreed. Imam Khalil spoke in French, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "I come to express sorrow for what happened. The man who attacked your procession does not represent Islam. He does not represent our community. He represents the poison of extremism that hurts everyone it touches. We stand with you in rejecting violence, and we pray for all who were frightened by his actions." The response from the crowd was applause. Not triumphant or celebratory applause. Solemn, acknowledging applause. Recognition of a gesture that took courage in a tense moment. That evening, as investigators continued questioning witnesses, a pattern emerged in the testimonies. Despite the chaos, despite the darkness, despite the fear, nearly everyone who had been within visual range agreed on the basic facts. Something luminous had appeared. It had approached Kareem. He had dropped the weapon. He had collapsed in tears. The disagreement came in interpretation. Was it a genuine supernatural event? A stress-induced mass hallucination? An unexplained natural phenomenon? Depending on one's existing beliefs, the evidence could be fitted into different frameworks. But the practical effect remained undeniable. Violence had been stopped. A potential tragedy had been averted. And a man who had come to attack had left in handcuffs, crying not in rage but in something that looked remarkably like remorse. The following weeks brought intensive investigation from multiple angles. French authorities needed to assess whether Kareem Benjelloun had connections to organized extremist groups. The Catholic Church's officials in Rome wanted detailed accounts to determine if the incident warranted formal investigation as a potential miracle. Media outlets sought experts to analyze the videos and eyewitness psychology. Kareem remained in custody. French law regarding attempted assault with a weapon was clear. But prosecutors faced unusual questions. The attack had been stopped before significant harm occurred. The perpetrator showed immediate and apparently genuine remorse. The circumstances of that remorse were extraordinary. His assigned attorney, Marie Durand, faced a unique challenge. How do I defend a client who insists on taking full responsibility and wants no defense based on mental impairment? He won't allow me to suggest psychological break. He insists he was fully aware of his intentions and fully aware of what he experienced. Psychological evaluation was mandatory. Dr. Philippe Rousseau, a forensic psychiatrist from Toulouse, conducted extensive interviews with Kareem over several days. His report, submitted to the court in early October, reached surprising conclusions. Mr. Benjelloun demonstrates no signs of psychotic disorder. His thought processes are coherent. He shows appropriate emotional responses. His memory of events is clear and detailed. While his description of experiencing a vision is unusual, his presentation of that experience doesn't fit criteria for hallucination or delusion. He reports it as an external event, not an internal mental phenomenon. He acknowledges others may interpret it differently, which is inconsistent with delusional thinking. The report continued. Most notably, Mr. Benjaloun has undergone what appears to be genuine psychological transformation. His previous mindset of grievance and anger has been replaced by remorse and a desire to repair harm. This is not the gradual change typically seen in rehabilitation. This is acute transformation occurring in a single moment. It resembles accounts of sudden conversion experiences described in religious literature across cultures. Meanwhile, investigative teams were analyzing the physical evidence. The sanctuary security cameras had captured portions of the incident, though the angle and lighting quality limited usefulness. Digital forensics experts examined the videos posted online. One team from the French National Center for Scientific Research studied frame-by-frame analysis of the best quality video available. Their findings, while inconclusive, were provocative. The luminosity that appeared on video couldn't be explained as reflection or electrical lighting. Something had produced light, but identifying the source proved impossible from the footage alone. They noted something else. The light appeared to affect the video sensors in ways that standard light sources don't. The pixels recorded values outside normal ranges for natural or artificial illumination. This suggested either equipment malfunction, but multiple phones recorded similar anomalies, or an unusual type of electromagnetic phenomenon. Church authorities from Rome sent a delegation to Lourdes in late September. Their mission was fact-finding, not determination. The formal process for declaring a miracle involved years of investigation. But they needed to assess whether the incident warranted that process. The delegation interviewed over 50 witnesses. They collected written testimonies. They reviewed medical records confirming Thomas Mercier's shoulder injury from the pipe strike. They examined the broken statue. Their preliminary report, confidential but later leaked to media, stated, "While we cannot at this time make definitive determination, the evidence suggests an event occurred that lacks natural explanation through currently understood means." The consistency of witness testimony, the physical effects observed, and the profound transformation of the attacker's mindset all support consideration of supernatural intervention. Further investigation is warranted. But not everyone was convinced. Skeptical organizations sent their own investigators. The Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, based in the United States, dispatched a team that arrived in early October. Their approach was systematic. They documented the exact location and conditions. They interviewed witnesses with focus on potential natural explanations, unusual light reflection from the river, group psychology effects, misinterpretation of ordinary phenomena amplified by religious expectations. Their report, published online in mid-October, argued, while witnesses sincerely believe they experienced something supernatural, the evidence supports a more mundane explanation. The combination of darkness, stress, pre-existing religious context, and the power of suggestion can produce remarkable collective experiences. The light phenomenon can be explained through multiple overlapping flashlights, candles, and reflective surfaces creating unusual effects. The attacker's breakdown is consistent with acute stress reaction when confronted by a crowd. The two conclusions, supernatural event versus psychological phenomenon, represented poles between which public opinion scattered. Surveys conducted in France showed roughly even split. About 40% believed a genuine miracle had occurred. About 40% believed natural explanation. 20% remained uncertain. International response varied by region. In predominantly Catholic countries, acceptance rates were higher. In more secular societies, skepticism dominated. But nearly everyone agreed the incident was remarkable regardless of its ultimate explanation. Kareem's trial was scheduled for November 2025. The prosecutor's office offered a plea agreement, guilty plea to attempted assault, suspended sentence with probation and mandatory psychological counseling. The offer acknowledged both the seriousness of the crime and the unusual circumstances. Kareem's attorney advised accepting. You'll avoid prison. You'll get supervision and support for reintegration. This is an exceptionally generous offer given the circumstances. But Kareem asked for time to consider. He had one request. He wanted to speak with Sister Marie-Claire. The meeting was arranged in mid-October. They sat in a private room at the sanctuary offices, under supervision but with privacy for conversation. Kareem spoke first. "I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. But I need to tell you directly how sorry I am for what I tried to do." Sister Marie-Claire listened quietly. When he finished, she responded, "The person you need forgiveness from most is yourself, and perhaps from God, however you understand God. But yes, I forgive you, because holding on to anger would poison me, not you." They talked for over an hour. About faith, about anger, about transformation, about how a moment can change everything. As Kareem was preparing to leave, he asked, "What do you think happened that night?" "Really?" Sister Marie-Claire smiled. "I think grace happened. How it happened, through what mechanism, divine or natural, I don't need to know. I just know grace happened. You're alive. No one was seriously hurt. And you're sitting here asking for forgiveness instead of planning more violence. That's grace." Kareem accepted the plea agreement. At the Tarbes courthouse, he stood before Judge Sophie Laurent. "I came to Lourdes with hate in my heart. I was completely wrong. What happened that night shattered my hate and showed me the truth. We're all just humans seeking meaning. I'm asking for the chance to prove I'm no longer that person." Judge Laurent imposed sentence: 3 years suspended, 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, and community service at interfaith organizations. His assignment placed him at a dialogue center in Toulouse. The early weeks were uncomfortable. Other volunteers knew his history. Trust had to be earned. During a session on religious art, Kareem spoke hesitantly. "Islam discourages depicting prophets to prevent idolatry. But I've learned I was committing different idolatry. I worshipped my own anger. I made resentment into a false god." Another participant responded, "That's profound, brother." His honesty gradually transformed suspicion into acceptance. He became effective working with at-risk youth through the de-radicalization program. One was Youssef, 19, consuming extremist content. At a coffee shop, Kareem shared his complete story. The anger, the attack, the appearance, the transformation. Youssef listened intently. "You really saw something?" "I saw something that broke me out of the prison I'd built in my mind. A prison where everyone different became an enemy." By December, his supervisor wrote, "Kareem speaks from authentic experience. He's particularly effective with at-risk youth." In an interview, Kareem said, "People want instant transformation. That night was my turning point. But what comes after matters more. I'm still learning. Still growing." September 2026. 1 year later, Kareem received an invitation to Lourdes anniversary commemoration. After struggle, he agreed to attend quietly. September 14, 2026. Security was increased. Kareem arrived early. Some approached to say they'd been praying. Others kept distance. Sister Marie-Claire found him. "You came. I needed to remember. To honor what happened." At 8 o'clock, the procession began. Candles ignited. Voices rose. When they reached the attack spot, leaders paused for silence. Tears streamed down Kareem's face. Not grief. Gratitude. For survival. For transformation. The procession completed peacefully. Afterward, Imam Hassan Khalil approached. "What will you do with this experience?" "I don't know. I thought transformation would bring certainty. But I'm still uncertain. Maybe that's sufficient." A journalist asked, "Do you believe the Virgin Mary appeared?" "I believe something stopped me from terrible violence. Whether supernatural or something else, I don't know. What I know is the effect. I'm alive. No one was hurt. I'm different. Those are facts. What about skeptics who say nothing supernatural occurred? They're entitled to their view. I cannot prove what I experienced. I can only live differently. Maybe that's the real miracle, choosing to stay changed,